Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Test Code Automate. So this is my 33rd video for the Playwright with TypeScript series. In this video, I'm going to tell you about that how to save and reuse authentication state. So let's start. Playwright executes tests in isolated environments called browser contexts. So once you execute your test script, you would be able to see that it is getting executed into the incognito mode. And by using authentication state, tests can load existing authenticated state. This eliminates the need to authenticate in every test and speed up the test execution. And here we will authenticate once in setup project, save the authentication state, and then reuse it to bootstrap each test already authenticated. We will create a new setup project in config file and declare it as a dependency for all your testing projects. This project will always run and authenticate before all the tests. All the testing projects should use the authenticated state as storage state. About these 2 points we are going to discuss in detail in our video. So stay tuned till end. Reusing authenticated state covers cookies and local storage based authentication. And what are cookies? An HTTP cookie or web cookie or browser cookie is a small piece of data that server sends to a user web browser. The browser may store the cookie and send it back to the same server with later requests. Typically, an HTTP cookie is used to tell if two requests comes from the same browser, keeping a user logged in. So in short, we are going to log in into the application once and then we will save that authentication state. And for each test, we are going to use that authentication state. So you'll not have to log in for each test. Okay, there may be n number of tests into n number of test scripts files. So that's enough onto the introduction front. Let's see the practical example that how we can save and reuse authentication state. So there are 3 different ways to save or preserve and then reuse authentication state. And first one is by using the codegen command. So before proceeding further, let me tell you about the application which we are going to see for the demo purpose and what are all the test scenarios which we have automated. So for this particular video, I'm going to use this site which is Orange HRM. Okay, so let me log in into the application. So in my test scripts also, we would be first logging in into the application. Okay, and once we are logged in into the application, here into the first test, once we are logged in, we would be checking that this timesheet icon is appearing here under the quick launch or not. And then we would be clicking here and then we would be validating this timesheet should be visible. So this is our first test about which we just discussed. Okay, here we are just checking that quick launch heading text is appearing or not. And then inside this, we are checking that timesheet button is available and then we are clicking on it. And once we click there, then we are validating this timesheets should be visible here, right? This list. And now coming on to the second test where we are clicking here onto the recruitment from the left hand navigation and then we are clicking onto the add and here we are entering this first name, middle name and last name and then we are giving the email ID here and then clicking onto the save button and once we click save then we are validating title of this candidate. So see, this is the second test where we have clicked onto this recruitment. Here we are clicking onto the edit button and then we are validating this add candidate title is appearing here. And then after that, we are adding first name, last name, middle name and the email ID here and then clicking onto the save button. And once we save it, we are validating that created item is appearing with this heading, right? So this is the name which we have given, right? First name, middle name and last name. So this is our second test. So first and second test are within this file which is reuse auth practice.spec.ts which I have put here inside this tests folder. And for both of these tests, we have given this before each where we are logging in into the application. Okay. So for each test, first it will log in into the application, then it will perform all these actions and then it would be closing the browser. And the same process it is going to repeat for the second test where it will log in first and then it will perform all the tests and then it will close the browser. Here we are not logging out just to make it simple. Now coming on to the third test which I have kept inside this file which is reuse auth practice2.spec.ts and inside this file this is the third test where we are first logging in into the application with this before each and once we are logged in into the application then onto this dashboard page Again, we are validating this quick launch is appearing here or not with this text, and then we will verify this apply leave button is appearing here, and then we are clicking onto it, and after this we would be validating this my leave button is appearing on this page. So inside this third test, see what we discussed here. First we are going to check this quick launch is appearing or not, and then we are validating this apply leave button is visible, and then we are clicking onto it, and once we click there, then onto the landing page this my leave should be displayed, right? This button we are validating. So these are all our tests which we are going to use for this particular video. I have already created these tests, and I have just created it using this codegen tool. So by recording, you can also create such type of tests, right? Previously, we have already discussed about recording. So if you have not watched those videos related to the recording, I will provide the link of all the videos into the description, or you can click onto the I button to access those videos. So now let's start with the first way to save and reuse authentication state. So first way is by using the codegen command. Here we will run codegen with --save -storage flag to save cookies and local storage at the end of the session. This is useful to separately record an authentication state and reuse it later when recording more tests. So this first way is more helpful when you are recording your tests. Okay. But I just want to cover all the ways. So by end of this video, you will know that what are all the different ways and which way we need to prefer. Okay. So step by step, we will go for all the ways. Okay. And it would be easy for you also to understand this complete functionality. So to save the authentication state through the first way, you need to give the command. And what is the command? So command would be npx, then playwright, and then codegen. We have already used this command into my previous video when we have learned that how to use this codegen tool for the recording, right? If you have not watched that video, I would recommend you to watch the video. And after this, we need to give --save, then -storage, then equals to, and then we need to give the file name where you want to save your authentication state. So it would be JSON file. Okay. And here we need to give one name, right? So the name would be auth.json. So any name you can give where you want to save your authentication state. I have given this auth.json and then hit enter. So it is going to open the codegen tool. So now see the codegen tool with a blank browser got opened. Here we need to give the link of the application for which we want to save the authentication state. So once you give that link and hit enter, you would be able to see this login page. Here we need to provide this username and password as it is written here because it is the demo site. So here let's give the username, which is admin, and the password would be this one, admin123. And then we need to click onto the login button. And once we click onto the login button, let's validate this dashboard is appearing here onto the landing page. So here I am going to put one assertion. So assert text for this dashboard. Okay. So see here into the codegen tool, whatever the actions which we performed got logged here. And now we can close the browser. So see now this codegen tool and the browser got closed. And here as we have given this command to save the authentication state into this auth.json file. So here if you will see into your root folder, which is main folder, we are able to see this auth.json got created. Okay. So let me open this file, which is auth.json. And here we would be able to see this cookies and origins related data. Okay. And inside this origins, the local storage part is there. And we need not to worry about this data. Playwright will automatically create this file and will reuse it for the authentication purpose. Let me close this. So now, as we saw while recording, we will not have to log in again. We would be using this authentication state. And how we can use this? So for this, again, we need to use this command, which is npx playwright, then codegen. And after this, now we need to load that authentication state. So how we can do that? you need to give this hyphen hyphen, then load, then hyphen, then storage equals to, then file name, which is auth.json. Whatever the file name which you have given, you need to give it here. And after this, we need to give the link of the application for which we have saved the authentication state and we want to record again for that. Okay. So here you need to provide that link and then hit enter. So once I hit enter, again the codegen tool will get opened, but this time it will open with this particular link, and here we will not have to again log in into the application. So see, automatically this dashboard page is appearing here. So now you have got the point, right? First, we have saved the authentication state using this command, which is npx playwright codegen -save -storage equals to auth.json. And then we have used this auth.json file to load that authentication state, right? So here, while recording again, we will not have to log in again. It will automatically open the link with the logged in state. So yeah, that was the first way through which we saved the authentication state and then we have reused the authentication state. Now coming on to the second option, which is by using the global setup. We can use the global setup option into the configuration file to set something up once before running all the tests. Here it will authenticate once and reuse the authentication state in tests. So let's see the practical example. Let me first close these already opened codegen and browser. So now, as previously also we discussed, right? Here we are going to use this before each to log in before each test, right? So there may be any n number of test cases. For each test, we would be logging in with the help of this before each. We can put this code for each test also, but to reuse the code, we have given it inside the before each, right? And for the second test script file also, we have given this before each. We can also use the fixture for the same, but in that case also, we are going to log in for each test, right? For each test, first we would be logging in, then we would be performing specified actions for that, and then we would be moving on to the second test, and same process will get repeated. So to eliminate this login, we are going to use this global setup. So let's see how we can do that. So for that, I would create one file. Okay, it would be the plain test script file. For now, I am putting it directly inside this root folder. So here I am giving the file name as global-setup.ts. Any name you can give. It is not necessary to use the same name. And here we are going to create one function. So it should be async. Okay, because we are going to use the await inside it. So that's why we are marking it as the async. And then the function. And here we need to provide the name of the function. So here I am giving the name as the global setup only. Any name you can use. It is not necessary to use the same name. Okay. And here inside this function, we are going to log in into the application. So let me copy the same code. Okay, where we are entering the username, password, clicking onto the login button, and then we are waiting for this URL. Once it login, it will land onto this particular page with this URL. Okay, and then we are just validating this dashboard heading is visible or not. So let me copy this code and I will put the same code inside this global setup. But here we are not having this page, right? We cannot use page fixture directly here. We can use it here inside this test, but here we will have to create this page. Okay, so to create that, what you can do, you will have to first get the browser, and then from that you would be getting this context, and then you would be getting the page. Okay, previously also we have looked into this particular part into my fixtures video, where if we are not using the page fixture, how we can generate the page. Here we need to give the await, and to generate the browser, we need to give this chromium dot launch. For now, we are just logging in through the Chromium browser, so that's why we have used the Chromium. If you want to use any other browser like Firefox or WebKit, so you can use that. and we will receive this value inside a variable. So for that we need to give the const, then browser. This is the variable equals to. Then once we get the browser, we need to create the context. You can also create the page directly, but just to follow the standard process, I will use this await browser dot new context. Okay, and then we will receive its value inside a variable which is const and then context. And through this context, we are going to generate the page. Then again, we need to give this await, then context dot, and then the new page, which will give us the page, right, which we are going to use. And here we can receive its value inside the page variable. So here again, you need to put the const and then page. So by this, we are going to get the page, right? So see, now all the errors related to the page are gone. Here we are also getting this error for the expect. So we need to import it. So you can directly use this quick fix also. And here you can click onto the update import from Playwright test. So see, it got imported here into the first line. So by using this code, we would be able to log in into the application. Okay. And then at the end, to save the authentication state, we need to give this await, then page dot context parenthesis dot storage state you need to give, right? So if you will type sto, so it is appearing here at the top only, right? storage state. Okay, so you need to use this one. So this is going to save the authentication state, and where we need to save. So for that, we need to give the path. So here inside the curly braces, you need to give this path colon, and then the path where you want to generate this JSON file. So previously we have given this command, right? -save -storage equals to auth.json. Here we were generating it through the command, but here through the script, we are going to generate that auth.json, right? Where we would be saving our authentication state. So here let's give this auth.json again. Any name you can give. If you want to use multiple users also, there you will have to provide a different name like user1.json, user2.json. So for now, we are just using this auth.json. Okay. And let me delete this old file, so you would be able to see that once we execute, this file will get generated. Okay. So now we have created this function where we are logging in into the application, and then with the help of this line, we are saving the authentication state into auth.json. Okay, and it will create the file inside the root folder only. If you want to generate it into the specific folder, that also you can do. And it is recommended to put it inside a particular folder, which is Playwright. And then inside the Playwright folder, we need to give this .auth folder, and inside this, we are going to save this file. Okay, so let's do that also. You can also save it into different location also, but we would be putting that particular path inside the git ignore. So that's why we are giving that specific path. And I will tell you that why we need to give that particular path inside the git ignore later. Okay. So here, let me give the path where we want to save authentication state. Okay. So here, first I'm going to the root folder. So currently we are here, right? Which is global-setup.ts, which is inside the main folder. So we are going on to this main folder. And here we need to generate one folder, which is Playwright. And then inside this, again, we are going to generate one more folder, which is .auth. And then again, the / you need to put. So this is the folder which is going to get generated. Okay. The Playwright folder, inside it, there would be .auth folder, and inside it, we are going to save our authentication state in this auth.json file. So here we have created the function, right? Now we need to tell the Playwright to use this particular function to log in into the application and then save the authentication state. Okay. So for that, we need to go into this playwright.config.ts file, okay, where we do all the configuration. And here inside this file, we need to give the value of this global setup. So here, let's put this global setup. Okay, this is the key which we are going to use, and its value would be the path of that particular file. So this file we are going to use, and its path we need to give. So /. So from this configuration file, we are going on to its parent folder, and here we are going to use this file, which is global-setup.ts. So exact file name you need to give. Don't put any spelling error, otherwise it will not work. Okay, and then comma you need to put. Okay, so this is the key and this is the value. So global setup is the key where we are going to provide this value where we have created the function which we want to use for our setup to log in into the application. And then after doing this, we need to tell the Playwright that we are going to use the authentication state which we have just saved by using this particular file, right? So to tell it, we need to again give the key value player, but this time we are going to provide it inside this use. Okay. For the specific project, you can also provide it inside this use. For the Chromium and for the Firefox, you can provide it here. And to use it for all the projects, simply we are going to give it here inside this use. Okay. So here you need to provide this storage state, okay, as the key, and then we are going to provide the value. So storage, storage, and then state, and then colon, and here we need to provide the value. So its value would be this auth.json file, right, which we are going to use for our authentication purpose. So here we need to provide the exact path with the file name. Okay, so exact path would be dot / okay. So here we have come on to this particular folder, and then we need to provide the Playwright and then / dot auth, then / and then the file name. Why we have given this path? Because we have generated our auth.json, right, inside this Playwright then .auth folder. Okay, so that's why we have given the same path there, and then we need to give this file name also, which is auth.json. You can also copy the same path directly from here also, okay, just to avoid any mistake. And let me paste it directly here, and then comma also you can put. So now here we have created this global-setup.ts file where we have created one function, okay, and inside this function we are logging in into the application. This time we were not having this page fixture directly available, so that's why we have created this page using this browser context. And once we created this function, one more thing which we have to do, we will have to export this, okay. And to export this, what you will have to give? So here you will have to provide this export default and then this global setup function. So here we are exporting this global setup, and once this global setup file is ready, simply we need to go to this playwright.config.ts file where we need to provide this global setup value. So this global setup would be the key and its value would be the file which we are going to use for the setup, right? Which will generate the authentication state once we log in first time. So this line you need to put. And one more thing which we did, where we have used this storage state as the key and its value would be this auth.json file which will get generated from this global setup function. So now our setup is ready and we can execute our test script. Okay. So to execute our test script, let me use the command only so that we would be able to see that how the execution is going. It is showing that there are some errors into the Playwright config file. Sometimes VS Code shows it, but yeah, we have no problem have been detected in the workspace. Sometimes once you make changes into the file, and for me this autosave is enabled, so that's why VS Code sometimes show this message, but no need to worry about that. Okay, you can check it by clicking onto that show details, so it will show you if you have done any mistake into this playwright.config.ts. So now let me start the execution. So to start the execution, I have again opened this terminal from here, terminal, new terminal, okay, because it got closed for me. And here you need to give this npx playwright, then test. Okay, so it will execute all the test scripts which are available inside this test folder, right? And for now we have directly given this headless false into this use inside the playwright.config.ts file. So we would be able to see that how execution is happening for us. Okay. So before starting the execution, one more thing which I would have to do is to comment out this login code, right? So let me comment out the code where we are entering the username, password, and then clicking onto the login button. So whole code I have commented out, but this line you will have to give because it will be opening the browser and then it would be providing the link, right, which we want to open. But this time the execution will happen and it will do the login first time only. For each test, we are not going to log in into the application. Once we open this particular link here using this page.goto, so it will directly use the authentication state and we would be able to see the logged in page directly. Okay, so it is going to save the time in that way, right? Let's say if we are going to have 100 or 200 test cases and this login process is going to take 30 seconds or 1 minute. So for each test, we are going to increase the 1 minute of execution time, right? But here by using this authentication state, we are going to eliminate that time. So on the first time we would be logging in into the application, we would be saving our authentication state. And then once the execution happen for each test, we are going to use that authentication state, right? So here inside the before each hook, I have just given this page.goto. So before each test, we are just going to use this line, which is await page.goto. If you don't want to provide it inside the before each, for each test, you can provide this, right? Page.goto and then the link which you want to use for your project also. And here for the second file also, I will comment out that particular part. You can also delete it as we are not going to use it now. So now here, let me start the execution using this command, which is npx playwright test. Okay, hit enter. And here what it would be doing, first it would be executing this particular global setup function, right, where it would be logging in into the application. See, it has done that. Now our test execution is started, and here it is just opening this link, and as you are able to see, right, we are not getting this login page because first time it has already done the execution and generated this auth.json file, right, where it is saving that authentication state. And then for each test, it is just using that particular authentication state. Here we are able to see this running 6 tests because it is going to run it onto the both Chromium and the Firefox browsers, because we have configured only 2 browsers here. So that's why it is executing onto both the browsers. Okay. And here if you will see, this folder got generated, which is Playwright. And then inside this auth folder is there, .auth. And then we are getting this auth.json file. And now the execution is happening onto the Firefox browser. And here for all the browsers, it is going to use that same authentication state, right? So no matter what, on which browser the execution is getting performed, it is going to use the same authentication state which we just saved. Okay, so now it is executing it onto the Firefox. And see, now the execution just got completed and we are able to see the result inside the HTML report. Okay, we have got one failure. So here we have got failure onto this particular line where we were trying to detect the heading, and see the screenshot also got generated. So it is taking some time to load, so that's why it got failed. But for us, if you will see this complete report, so we are able to see all the tests, right, which we executed. We executed 3 tests onto both Chromium and the Firefox. And here we would not be able to see that login which we have done. So to overcome this particular part where we are not able to see the login process inside the HTML report or inside the traces if it will get generated, we are going to use the third way to authenticate, which is by using the dependencies. So now let's see for this third way, which is by using the project dependencies. Project dependencies are list of the projects that need to run before the test in other projects run. With the project dependencies, you define a project that run before all the projects. This is the recommended way to configure the global setup. As with the project dependencies, your HTML project will show the global setup. Traceware will record a trace of the setup, and the fixtures can be used. So that's what. Into the second way, we were not able to see this setup process. Here we provided the login process. So that's what we are not able to see here inside the HTML or inside the traceware. But with the help of this way, we would be able to see that login process also inside our reports or traces. So let's see how to use this third way to save and reuse the authentication. So now we are not going to use this globalSetup.ts, right, where we have created this function. So you can delete this file also, or for now, let me comment out the code here. Okay. So now we are going to create one more TypeScript file, but this time we would not be using the function inside it. We would directly be using the test, and inside that test, we would be logging in and saving the authentication state. So let's create one more file. So directly inside the test folder also, you can create that particular file. It is not necessary to create it here, but as we are going to use the test inside it, so that's why I'm creating it here. So the name can be given like this: global.setup. Any name you can give, .ts. Okay. Previously we were just using this global-setup.ts, but this time we are using this .setup then .ts. Okay. So by looking at this file extension only, we will get to know that it is the setup file. And here we are going to use this test block. So first import it, import, then test, then from, and from Playwright test we need to import it. And then we are going to use this test. And then here we can give any name, right? So login setup you can give for this particular test. And then after this, we need to put the comma. Then after the comma, we need to give this anonymous function, which should be async, arrow symbol, and then the curly braces. And here we can directly use this page fixture as we are using this test block. So inside the curly braces, you need to give this page. So previously into the second way, we were not able to use this page fixture. Why? Because we were using this function, and here we had to create this browser context, and then by using it, we created this page, right? But here, as we are using this test block, we can directly use this page fixture. And here, now we are going to log into the application, and then we are going to save the authentication state. So the same code which we have put inside this global setup that you can directly use. So let me copy paste it. Okay. From this particular part, right? We need not to create this browser context and page. So here, let me paste it. Let me remove all the comments. So see, here we are using the same code which we have used into the second way, right? And as we are getting this expect error, so we can also import it. So now you need not to do anything inside this particular file. Our login code is ready, which will log into the application. And here, before saving the authentication state, we are waiting for the URL and provided this assertion because we want to be assured that actual cookies are getting set. Otherwise, if we will directly click on to the login and save the authentication state, so it may happen that the actual cookies are not set, because as soon as it will click onto the application, it will save the authentication state. It may take some time to load the complete page. So that's what we want to be assured. And then only we are saving the authentication state here. Okay. So now, as we have created this setup file, so now we need to tell the Playwright that we need to use this particular global setup. Okay. So for that, here, let me comment out the 2 lines which we have put previously to use the second way by using the global setup. You can directly remove these lines also, but for your reference, I'm just putting the comment for these 2 lines. So here I'm just commenting out this particular line where we have provided the value of the global setup. And I will also comment out this line where we have given this storage state key and the value. Okay. And this time we are going to use the dependencies. And how we can use that? So once you come to this project section, so you would be able to see all the projects which we are going to use, right? So for now we have just configured the Chromium and Firefox. So here we are going to create one more project. So here inside this square brackets, you need to provide these curly braces. Okay. So this is the project which we are creating. And inside this curly braces, you need to give the name of the project. So the name would be setup. Okay. And then we need to provide the file which this particular project is going to execute. So this is where we would be mentioning that we want to execute our global setup file. Okay, which is this one, global.setup.ts, which we have created inside the tests. Okay, so here we can directly give this test match. Okay, so we want to match this particular test and its value would be this particular file. So here we need to give the name of the file global.setup.ts. Okay, so now we have created one more project and its name is setup. And here we have mentioned that we want to execute this global.setup.ts file. So this is the first part. Now you need to do the second part where you want to tell your project that you want to use this saved authentication state, right? Which we have saved at this particular line. So previously we have given this line, right? Storage state : and this path where we have created this auth.json. So the same thing you need to give, but this time we would not be providing it directly inside this use, but we would be giving this storage state key and value for each project. So for each project, we have this use, right? So inside this, we have mentioned the device. Okay. So here you can also provide the second value. Okay. Which would be storage state, then : and then you need to provide that particular path where you have saved the authentication state. So we can directly use this path, right? Rather than writing it again. Okay. Here inside this global.setup.ts also we have given the same path. Okay. So that you can also copy. And then you need to put it here. So now we are telling Playwright for this Chromium project, use this authentication state. So previously we have used it directly inside this use. So that's why it was applicable for all the browsers. But this time we will have to mention it separately. Okay. So for the Firefox also we are having this use. So here also you can provide the same storage state and its value. Okay. So after the comma, just put it and let's hit enter. And to format the whole code, you can directly press Ctrl+Shift+F. Okay. So it will format the complete code. So let's say if you are having other projects also like WebKit or any other project. So for that also, if you want to use the authentication state, you will have to provide this storage state inside this use. And why we have not given this storage state directly inside this global use? Because let's say our execution started, okay, and then it will see that these are all the projects for which we want to use the authentication state. Okay, so when first time we are doing the execution, what will happen? It will execute this global.setup.ts file. But if we have given this storage state directly inside this main use, so while executing this global.setup.ts, it will check that this auth.json is here or not, because it will consider that for each of the project, it need to use this authentication state, which we have mentioned by storage state, right? So that's why for this particular project, which is setup project, we don't want to use the authentication state, because here only we are generating the authentication state. So that's why we are providing this storage state individually for each project rather than using directly here inside the main use. If you want to do the reverse engineering, you can also try it by giving it, and then you will get the failure. Okay, because first time when it will execute this particular project, it would not be able to find this auth.json. And let's say if this auth.json is already generated, in that case also inside this particular project, what we are doing, we are logging in into the application. But if it will find this auth.json where we have saved the authentication state for this particular project, once it comes onto this particular line, which is page.goto, okay, and open this URL, our login process will get skipped. So in that case also you would be able to see the failure. So that's why you need not to provide this storage state directly inside the main use, but you need to provide it for the individual projects. So don't get confused and make this mistake. Now we need to provide one more thing. And what is that? We need to tell the Playwright whenever it execute these projects, right, which we have provided here like Chromium, Firefox or WebKit, any project. So first they need to execute this setup, and to do that, what we need to give? We need to provide these dependencies. So here let's put these dependencies for each project. And how you can put that? So here for each project, you need to give this dependencies as the key and then the value that which project which we want to execute. So here let's put this dependencies. Okay, so this is the dependencies and its value would be the name of the project, right, which we want to execute before executing this project. And how you can do that? You need to provide the array, and inside this you need to provide the value of the name, right? So in this case, we want to use this particular project, which is setup project, as the dependency of this Chromium project. So whenever it will start the execution for this Chromium project, it will first execute this setup project. So this is the dependency, which is the key. And here we have given the value of the setup project. And then you need to put the comma. And now same thing we need to give for the other projects also, right? So for now we have given it for the Chromium. Now we are going to give it for the Firefox. So before executing these two projects, it is going to see this particular dependencies, okay, which is the setup. So now it is going to come onto this project and it will execute the file, which is global.setup.ts, because we have given this test match here. So it is not necessary that you are just going to execute only single file as part of this setup. There may be any other setup which you will require that can also be done with this way. So here we have directly provided this name, but we can also use the regular expression, right? Let me use the regular expression rather than using it directly. So let me comment out this line. Let's see how we can give the regular expression. So here we need to give this test match, then colon, and to provide the regular expression, you need to put this double forward slash, and then between these forward slashes, we need to give the regular expression. So here we want to execute all the setup files. So in that case, let's say if there are 2 or 3 or multiple setup files which are there with this .setup.ts extension. So in that case, we can give the regular expression like this .star and then .setup.ts. And to provide this dot as the actual value inside this regular expression, you will have to put the backward slash before it. So here what we are doing, we are telling the Playwright to match all the files with this .setup.ts extension. So this .star mean any value which can be there, right? abc.setup.ts, let's say we want to execute that, or database.setup.ts, any setup file can be there. So it will detect it and then it will get executed. Okay, for now, for the login purpose, we are just going to use one setup file, which is global.setup.ts. Okay, so it's up to you if you are just using one setup file, so you can directly give the name like this. Okay, and if you are using multiple setup files, then in that case you can use the regular expression like this. Okay, After that, you can put the comma also. So now our setup is ready. And what we have done, so rather than using this function for the global setup, we are now using this .setup.ts file where we have provided the test where we are logging into the application. Okay, and then we are saving the authentication state. And inside our playwright.config.ts file, we have created one more project with the name as setup, where we are telling to match this global.setup.ts file. Okay, and then into the each project, we have provided this storage state. So each project is going to use this authentication state, which we are going to save inside this auth.json, okay, which we have saved here, right? And same we have done for the other projects also. And then for each project, we have given this dependencies. Okay, so dependencies would be the key, and its value would be the array of the project which we want to execute as the dependency. So for now, we have only one project which we want to execute. So inside the array, we have provided the name of this project, which is setup. So yeah, this is the second way. Let me quickly do the execution and show it to you how it is working. Let me close this particular file. And for now, let me delete this playwright then .auth, so that you would be able to see this file is again getting generated. For now, I'm deleting this one. Okay. And you can also delete this one, but for your reference, once I will put the code into the GitHub, so you would be able to see this commented code also. So that's why I'm not deleting this file. So now let's start the execution. Here again, see, we are getting the same error, but inside this config file, we are not having any error. If you will click onto the show details, you will see no problem there. So now let me start the execution. But before starting the execution, let me make one change inside this configuration file, where we are configuring this traces on for each execution. Okay, so that we would be able to see that this login process is appearing inside our HTML file as well as inside the trace also. So now I have changed this trace to on, so it will get generated for each of the tests, and also we would be able to see the traces for the login process, which we were not able to see when we were using the second way of using this global setup. So now let's start the execution. Okay, sorry, I've closed the terminal. Let me reopen it. So new terminal. This PowerShell I'm using for the terminal. You can also use this git bash or the command prompt, okay, with which you are comfortable. So now let's give the command, which is npx playwright and test. Okay, npx playwright and then test. Okay, so now this time execution is going to happen. With this, we would also be able to see one more test which will get executed, which is part of this global.setup.ts file, right? This test, which is login setup. So now let's hit enter. So see here, first time this login would be happening. So this login test is getting executed. So this is the first test, and now our all other tests will get executed. So we have 3 tests which are going to get executed onto both Chrome and Firefox browser. So now execution got completed and it has generated the report also. Okay. So now first time the login happened, right? And it saved the authentication state inside the auth.json file, which should be here, right? Inside the playwright, we have this .auth folder, and inside this, we have this auth.json file, which got generated. And all other tests have just used that authentication state. And this time, we would also be able to see this login process inside our HTML report and inside the trace here. Okay. So this is our report. Let me close all other old reports here. And see, we have this global.setup.ts file, which is appearing here. This is the test script file. And this is the login process, which just happened one time, right? So see here, we are able to see the setup. Okay, this is the project name. And now it has executed all other tests. Okay, so see, all 3 tests got executed onto the Chromium. So these are the Chromium execution result, and these are the Firefox execution result. And apart from the HTML report, we would also be able to see the trace file for this login setup, right? This global setup which we have done. For that, we would also be able to see the trace file, right? Here we can verify, let's say, if any failure is happening inside this setup project, so that we can validate, which was not happening previously. into the second way when we were using the global setup. So yeah, these were all the three ways, right, which we can use to save or preserve the authentication state, and then we can reuse that authentication state. So the first way was mainly for the recording purpose, right? And these two, second way and the third way, you can use, but it is recommended to use the third way, which is by using the dependencies, because here we would be able to see the setup process inside our HTML report, and for that traces will also get generated. And here if you are also using the fixture, so you can use normally like the regular test, right? So if you want to use any specific fixture, right? Previously we have used this page object model with the fixture. So in that case, let's say if you want to use the login page fixture, so you can directly use when you are using this third way to save and reuse the authentication state, which is by using the dependencies. So now let's say we have one case where we don't want to use the authentication state for a specific test script file. So here let's understand it. So let's say this is our file, and for this we don't want to use the authentication state. So here we would be providing this particular code where we can reset storage state in the test file to avoid the authentication that we set up for the whole project. Okay. So here let's provide it. So here you need to give this test dot use. Okay. And then inside the parenthesis, you need to put the curly braces. Then we are going to provide this storage state as the key, then colon, and then we need to provide this value where we are mentioning this cookies and origins with the blank array. And why we are doing so? So if you have looked into this auth.json, which is getting generated, right, when we are saving the authentication state, so it is providing the values of this cookies and origins inside this array, right? So these are all the values which are getting generated when we are saving the authentication state. But here we are just mentioning that cookies and origins are having this blank array. So that's why it will not use the authentication state. So let me copy this particular code and directly you can paste it here. Okay, you can also write it down. So here inside the curly braces, first we have given the storage state, then colon, and then again we have provided the curly braces where we are mentioning this cookies colon and then this blank array, then comma, then origins colon, and then the blank array. So in short, what we have done, we have provided this JSON directly inside the use where we have removed all of these part, and we are just providing the blank array for both cookies and also for the origins. And now if I will execute this test, so what will happen? It will not use the authentication state for this particular test script file, but it will use the authentication state for these two files. Okay. So first time if I will execute directly, so it will get failed. Why so? Because we are not using the authentication state, and also we are not logging in into the application for this test. Okay. So that's why you will have to provide this login information here, and then you can execute your test script. So this is the way through which we can avoid using this authentication state for whole test script file. But what if we just want to use it for the specific test only? So in that case, you can directly provide this context.clear cookies. Okay, let me comment out this particular part. Okay. And let's say if I don't want to use the authentication state for this test. Okay. So here we need to provide await. Then we need to give the context. Okay. So to get the context, we can directly use this context fixture. So here after the page, put the comma and then put the context. Okay. And here you need to use this context dot and then clear cookies. Okay. So if you will use this particular line of code, so it will not use the authentication state for this test only. Okay. So there are two ways. First way where we can give this test.use. So in that case, it will not use the authentication state for complete test script file. And into the second way, we have just given it for the specific test. So it will not use the authentication state for the test where we have given this line. Okay. So let's say there are two tests. So you can provide this line for those two tests. And in between, I told you, right, we are going to generate this auth.json file inside this playwright.auth folder, right? So regardless of the authentication strategy you choose, you are likely to store authenticated browser state on the file system. And this is a very critical information, right? And we don't want to publish it onto the Git repository. Let's say if you are creating any project and your Git repository is public, so everyone would be able to see that information there, right, onto the Git repository. So that's why we have generated this auth.json file inside this playwright then .auth folder. And here we are going to provide this path inside .gitignore file. Okay, so that whenever you push your code onto the Git repository, it will not push the files which are available inside this path. Okay, so here if you will see, we have this .gitignore file into our project. So you need to open it. Okay, and here you need to provide that particular path. So see here we have provided this / playwright, then / then this .auth, then /. Okay, so whenever we push our code onto the Git repository, this path is going to get ignored and it will not push the files which are available inside this folder. So yeah, that's it for this particular video. Let me give you the quick recap. Let me close all these files. So here we saw that our problem statement was that, so whenever we are using the multiple tests and in each test the login is required. So before executing the test, it will first log in into the application and then it will proceed with the further code. And to avoid this issue, what we did, we used the authentication state where we saved the authentication state and then we reused this authentication state. So by this way, we will not have to log in for each test. It will log in only one time before executing that test suite, and then it will save the authentication state and then it will reuse that authentication state for each of our tests. Okay, and we saw there are three different ways. So first way was using this codegen command where we have given npx playwright codegen, then -- save -storage. Okay, and to load it we have given -- load -storage and then the file name. And into the second way, we have created this function, right, where we are logging in into the application, then saving the authentication state. And into the configuration file, we have provided these two configurations where we have given the global setup key with the value of this file. And then we provided the storage state inside the main use where we have given the value for the auth.json where we saved the authentication state. But by this way, we were not able to see this login process inside our HTML report, or we were also not able to see the traces for this process was getting generated. And also we were not able to use any of the fixture, right? Here, just to use the page fixture, we had to create this browser context and then we used this page. And let's say if you want to use any other fixture, that also you cannot use here. So to avoid this particular issue, what we did, we used this dependencies. So here we have created one .setup.ts file, which is global.setup.ts file. Here we have created one test, and inside this test we have logged in into the application, and then we have saved the authentication state. And here we were also able to use the fixture directly. And then inside this playwright config file, we had to create one project where we have given the name and the test match for this global.setup.ts file. You can also provide the direct name, or you can give the regular expression. And then for all other projects where we want to use this setup, we had to give this dependencies. So this is the dependencies which we are providing for the each project into the third way, right, which we are using to save the authentication state. And then here we are mentioning that we want to execute this setup project before executing this Chromium project. Okay, and inside the use, we have given the storage state for this auth.json file with the complete folder structure. Okay, here we have not given this storage state inside the main use because I told you, right, if we will give this storage state inside the main use, so this project also is going to search for this auth.json, right, because it will execute this project, and then as we have provided the storage state inside the main use, so it will check and it will try to find out this auth.json file and our execution will get failed. Okay, so just keep that in mind and provide it very carefully. Okay, so these were the three ways through which we were able to save and reuse the authentication state. And we also discussed, let's say we don't want to use the authentication state for the whole test script file. So in that case, inside the test script file, you need to provide this test.use, and inside parenthesis, you need to give the curly braces. Then you will provide the key, which is the storage state, then colon, then we are providing this cookies and origins with the blank array. So this particular test script file will not use the authentication state. And if we want to do it for the single test only, so in that case, whichever the test where you don't want to use the authentication state, you will have to provide this single line, which is await context.clear cookies, right? Here we provided it for this test, where we have used this await context.clearCookies, and this context is the fixture. So that's why we have given it here inside this anonymous function. And we also saw that we are going to provide this particular path, which is playwright then .auth inside this .getignore file, so that once we push our code onto the Git repository, so in that case our auth.json file, which is available inside this path, will not get pushed. Okay, because this is the critical information for your project and you don't want to publish it to the world. So yeah, that's it from my end. You can click onto this first card to go to the next video. You can click onto the second card to access the whole Playwright tutorial playlist, and stay tuned for my upcoming videos. If you have any comments, questions or doubts, you can let me know into the comment section below. Please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Have a great day.